Per usual, everything that's just for educational purposes only. It is not intended as financial advice. On Thursday, we talked about a Bollinger Band squeeze, or we could see some interesting moves up or down, depending on how that broke. Over the week, I guess Friday, after the stream, we broke a lower on some weak jobs revisions. We had Fed governor resign. We had Trump moving nuclear submarines toward Russia. All sorts of fun stuff. Markets certainly didn't like that. We also have ETF flows here on BTC flipping quite negative, which I think is normal to see based on the move we experienced. These are Thursday's flows. It's T+1. So most of these aren't going to be day of Friday. We may see some overhanging flows on Monday, but it's definitely one thing to keep an eye on for August, which is seasonally a weak period anyway. But if we see flows come back in a bigger way, certainly not bearish for price. Just like flows for ETH were not bearish for price. Flows finally woke up for ETH for the first time really since inception. And it's going to be interesting to see, does this just zero out, or do we see a new floor for flows rather than just zeroing out for an extended period of time? But flows, if anything that can save us in these 2 months of doldrums, it's going to be flows. Flows clearly pulled ETH into its second strongest Q3, maybe strongest July ever. We'll take a look at that in a second. But that's definitely pretty abnormal for ETH, where Q3 tends to be a pretty sleepy period on average. Q3 for BTC as well, pretty non-exciting generally. And this is how it's really always been, at least pre-COVID. Q2, Q4 were where the action was at. October was where the action was at. Wake me up when September ends. I mean, all this stuff, right? We go through the calendar. You go through so many cycles. You tend to know what you're looking for, and all this stuff, of course, lines up with legacy, because legacy is what is really leading all this anyway as far as the data is concerned. There's seasonally weak periods for the S&P in the same spots with BTC. That's not a surprise. And if we look at monthly returns, we don't often have 5 monthly returns in a row that are green. And when we do, tend to see a weaker next month anyway. So a lot of this is how far down do you want to twist yourself into a pretzel and say, okay, it's the post-halving year. We've seen a couple of those. Those have been bullish. We've seen June-July combinations that have been bullish leading into a bullish August, whatever, right? For me, baseline, August, September, usually very light touch. Usually nothing going on. It's got to be a really good-looking setup. There's got to be a really good-looking risk-reward profile for anything to take that trade, just because this is a massive, massive headwind. And it saves you some dry powder for September when you generally see some sort of low into October. I mean, look at this October, right? So looking at this months and months and months in advance can really save yourself, right? From just taking it easy on the leverage, whatever. You do not want to miss October. Even if October is negative 80%, okay? This is about probabilities. This isn't about what actually is going to happen. So I really like leading into October, looking for a setup, which means it may take 2 months here on BTC to really want to trade anything again. Looking at ETH, I haven't looked at this yet, but so July had been very negative. So quite unusual. A couple of super positive Julys in there. August generally also fairly negative, plus 93% in August 2017. It's wild. But what will really mess with seasonality previously is regulatory changes or flows changes, right? Clearly flows were here now that weren't here years and years ago. Regulatory changes with the ETFs, with staking in the ETFs, whatever. Is that enough is the question. Is that enough to kickstart this a little bit, to get flows going, to get momentum going? I don't think so in August and September. If we even see it in August and September, I think there's a 100% chance that we see something further on regulatory clarity in Q4 as far as product is concerned. They've already greenlit staking and in-kind at the SEC level. It's just a matter of bringing it into the actual products. So we know what we want on flows, and we need to see it if we're going to bust through this headwind that we have with additional geopolitical risk a little bit. I downplay that a lot. I think generally most people should just ignore that stuff, which is a terrible thing to say, but you can't trade on geopolitical risk. You do have tariff stuff, which wasn't here in April. That's certainly going to be an issue, a drag on earnings. we're going to see inflationary pressures start to creep up with P&G saying they're going to raise prices by 25%. Amazon's already raising prices. So we're going to see that. Jobs data is bad. A lot of stuff going on, a lot of things going on. But from a technical perspective, so far, so good. We have survived at the Kijun. The best place to long is always on a breakout. The next best place to long is a bullish TK recross with price above cloud. And the other place to long is at the Kijun, at this red line. So we didn't quite hit it. We may hit it this week. We may get a bull div on that. We may get a hidden bull div on this. I don't have RSI on here, but a higher low with more momentum would be a hidden bull div relative to what we saw in June. Again, I say this unsurprisingly, we stopped at the yearly pivot. Despite the multi-month consolidation, despite this great looking chart pattern, we just stopped dead cold at 122. I don't know. So where's the next level? If we break 122, it's 150. That's psychological. It's the yearly pivot. It is the measured move of whatever's left here on some unfinished business with the cup and handle. And what we don't want to see is a bearish TK cross. You get that. And you got to be extra careful if you're long at that point. If you're still long, a lot of people cut. I'll take a look at the fractals in a second, but a lot of people are cutting trades based on the daily fractals, which is never a bad idea. And you certainly got to be careful at a bearish TK cross. Now, this last one was noisy on the daily, but if we see that again, you just can't, again, it's probabilities. You can't say there's going to be some miracle. That's not what it's about at all. It's about probabilities. What is the system? If you don't use the system, if you don't like the system, that's fine. But the system tells you bearish TK cross, you close your longs. That's what you do. It's a Pavlovian response. And at that point, we could see a risk of like an August-September move down to 100. And then you think people are calling end of cycle now. If we go revisit 100 at this point, you're going to get a lot of people talking about end of cycle stuff. The decision tree got a lot wider after breaking down because in the next 2 months, it's generally junk. That's just what it is. But for the moment, even with this move, we are seemingly okay. And a lot of it's going to come down to this week in Legacy. If Legacy can stabilize, I like our odds for August, probably within the next 2 weeks. And we'll take a look at the 6 hour as an example of that. But if Legacy, which we'll look at tomorrow, if that continues to mean revert, crypto's not going to be spared. BTC most likely not going to be spared. We have seen some outperformance in the past, but I think it's going to be unlikely. And just as a reminder for the 50x longers, this was August and September last year. I think generally it's pretty fresh in people's memories. We were in mega ultra ungodly chop in August and September. This was, of course, Gox unloading on us, Germany unloading on us, pre-election stuff. And the important part about all this is we came out of it above the cloud and we held above the cloud for a long time. This was probably a month above the cloud before we finally broke out. So August and September can be absolute garbage and we can still make it out of this, is my point here. And it's really, where do we end up in October? What does October look like? Because August and September, historically, very soft. Here was 2023. It looked about as bad as it could. We had in my mind, even at the time, even now, this was a great breakdown of a pattern. And for some reason, we held 26. And what do you know? Come out October, back above the cloud. Boom. So it can look like the end for many, many reasons. And we can still make it. We can still make it. I'd keep that in mind. But everybody's got to have their own trade plan. But this looked not good, especially after the BlackRock ETF application came through. That was over here. ETFs finally got approved over here, and then they launched later on, of course. But again, it was the ETFs that really turned this boat around. And that was, of course, this weekly edge to edge that really kicked everything off in October. So October is no stranger to mega bullishness. And then the other thing here is, like, if there's not a setup, what are you doing? There's really not much of anything going on yet. Maybe 2 weeks from now, but not yet. We're still in the pitchfork here. Nothing crazy. Looks great. Still bullish. No complaints. Nothing really tradable here. Doesn't look overbought. It's to the end of the resistance up here on the vanilla pitchfork, but still some unfinished business there on the falling wedge as well. So certainly not something you want to see break down, but again, the grand scheme of things, doesn't look that bad yet, at least. Here's the fractals. I was talking about this leading into that 80K dump from Galaxy. But when we broke here, I was out of anything that I cared about on the long side. And at this point, the reentry today would be 120, the same as it was pre-breakdown. So if we get to 120 at any point within the next 2 weeks. That's the fractals telling me, okay, this is a great re-entry level. We can look at that in a few different ways, but if we look at it on the 6 hour with the cloud, what we have seen for the past couple big breakouts this year was a nice little diag break, price above the cloud. I think the April case was clearly the strongest, but even in the June-July case, we did have a diag there that we broke out of. So this could be the same deal. We could see the same thing. If I have my bull goggles on, fastened, looking for setups, looking for something to do, if within the next 2 weeks we can get back above the cloud on the 6 hour, then I like it. Fractals obviously on the daily, but cloud 6 hour, maybe set a pain for that. Just to keep an eye on. Because, you know, if we can get above 117 within the next 2 weeks, maybe, right? Maybe that's a decent place, decent shot to think about some stuff. It's just way too early here. You know, there's just nothing. There's just nothing to do. It's in the no man's land at the moment. It's up to the bulls to hold this just flat for 2 weeks, right? It shouldn't be that hard to do if there are buyers in this market. And this will start to look a lot better 2 weeks from now if we can pull it up a little bit. The other challenging thing here is the COT data on the bottom, the CMR colored COT data, commitment to traders from CME futures. The commercials have dropped it off a cliff. Not something you want to see if you're bullish. So this could restart and they could get long again. But man, you do not want to see this curvature to the net commercial positions declining like that. That is usually a pretty good sign that for the moment, this move is over. Add this to the list of reasons why it's probably not too smart to expect much of anything just yet. And you'll notice, when did this really get kicked off again? Last year was into October. So something to watch for week by week. And we'll look at the ETH-COT data, and it's much worse than BTC. You have retail extremely long, retail usually wrong in the yellow there. Commercials red, net short, large spec also net short. So definitely more of a mixed bag and not something you want to see on the COD data. The cloud we're looking at, by the way, is the AI backtested cloud. It was backtested on BTC on the daily only, just on BTC. Nothing too worrisome here either, not a bear cross or anything yet. This picked up the April stuff beautifully. This picked up October beautifully. If we can get another bullish TK recross, you know, it'll get picked up on this, certainly. But ETH here, kind of giving you this TKC clamp to 3K, and we'll look at the standard cloud in a second that I use. But the question here is, how long do you want to hold this? And what is your time horizon? What is your target? You know, if you're like one of these ETH maxis that's got a .ETH profile and you're on all the ETH stuff, you don't really care about 3 or 4K. You're here for 10K, right? Let's be honest. Will we get there? I don't know. We might. It's possible. It's not impossible that we don't try to push for 10. So between now and now and October, it just doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter. If you're DCAing, you want lower prices. Let this come all the way back to 28, whatever. It's not going to look great on the cloud, but if you're confident that this has a chance to go to 10, who cares? I don't see a great setup here. I don't see a great entry here. I like it a lot more at 3 flat than here. Now this is the TradingView chart pattern automatic recognition algo. It's also pointing to that level here. We do have a Tenkin bounce, which, okay, I'll take it, I guess, but I'm much more comfortable seeing a full mean reversion down to the Kijun there. And just real quick, if we pull up the SPY and we look at where that could go, this is another reason just to be mindful that, yeah, we've had a little bit of move here on everything, but if we're trying to time this the best way we can, I would think the SPY at some point here may wick down to that level. I don't know what that is, 610 or something. It's at 621. It's not far, right? So what I generally say is bids on the Kijun, forget about it. If it hits, it hits. It does. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But I don't think it's really worth doing much of anything here on leverage just yet. Not for me. And here's the justification. You know, if we want to talk about how can we get to 10 on the technicals, it would be this ascending triangle setup. And I saw Ben Cowan, ITC, whatever it is, Into the Cryptoverse, whatever. He was talking about this too after I talked about it on Thursday. Not that he got this idea from me, but some sort of echo right shoulder here, inverted head and shoulder, maybe into 2026, where we get this blow off move. I would imagine, there's no such thing as a quintuple top. So I would imagine if we challenge 4K again, it would actually run this time. So I would mentally prepare yourself for that. Will it actually get back up there? I don't know. But I would love this to right shoulder out. It may take, I don't know, right? 2 months, may take all of the rest of the year. I have no idea. But that is a much cleaner trade and setup on the weekly. You can see the weekly TK cross hasn't even flipped yet. The cloud hasn't even flipped yet. This is going to take some time, but the setup is excellent. Excellent, excellent, excellent right here into 2026, right? This is not a like today, tomorrow setup, not even next quarter. This is probably a 2026 setup if the cycle keeps going into 2026. You, of course, have random stuff like this, stellar, similar chart. It has this rising floor. It hit the previous all-time high. And now what? Does it consolidate? Does it try to continue? Maybe something else to watch just in the deep periphery relative to ETH. If stuff like this is able to break out, why not? If stuff like LTC, again, very similar chart, is able to reach for all-time highs, again, why can't ETH try to go, And I've been saying this a lot, but LTC at this point, what do you care? 120, 150, 160. What is that? That is nothing. You want this to go test all-time highs again. Absolutely. And it's great to see something like ETH do it. It's great to see Stellar do it. And we're just going down the list, right? Okay, what else looks like this? Beep boop, LTC. Why not, right? I'm sure there's a few other charts that look similar. But as long as we can keep curling up, holding levels at the highs, I definitely like the potential here for something like this to break higher. And this could take, I don't know, 12 months. Who knows, right? Who knows? But the point is, it's at a spot where good things happen above the cloud. As for ETH BTC, also, again, what is your upside here in the near term, within the next 2 months, really? That's really all you need to care about. This could morph into a head and shoulders there on lower timeframes. It did reach for the first level, not quite in the zone of where you'd want it, but it did reach for the first level. On a pullback, I like 272 there at the Kijun. But even for ETH to be BTC like this as quickly as it did, probably is going to need a cooling off period, I would imagine. And here's ETH IBIT. Similar story, just in legacy land. A little bit of a inverted Adam and Eve up there. Doesn't look super, super pretty. And the rest of this stuff, there's really not much else. We're still in this consolidation phase, and I would imagine any bullishness is going to get pushed off to closer to Q4. We can have recovery, we can have mean reversion to the upside in this case with SOL to something like 180. But if you're trading SOL here, right, what do you care about 180? You don't care about 180. You want an all-time high retest. That's what everybody wants. That's 260, that's 300, potentially a new all-time high, potentially. So it's kind of interesting that both ETH and SOL, to me, don't really have much of anything here. For opposite reasons. ETH hit its target. SOL is just in doldrums, nothing, Bill. What is this? There's nothing here. There's nothing to say. There's nothing to do. I got nothing for you. It's going to take some time to repair that failed breakout at this point. SOL BTC is another one, similar to a few of these other alt charts, where they could be setting up for something Q4, potentially even Q1 2026. I don't think it's going to take that long for this pattern to play out, but we're setting up for a decent inverted head and shoulders here as well. If this can get above the cloud, hold above the cloud, stay above the cloud, consolidate above the cloud, that's all you need. It's not going to take much. Shouldn't be hard. Shouldn't be hard. But I like it way better at 1.6, 1.8, 1.7. Love it. I love it up there. Here it's dead. It's nothing. It's in the range. Who cares? Something to watch for. I got to give the people something, because if overall here there's not much going on. And speaking of something that hasn't done anything for a very, very long time, and that last time from memory moved on its own, not with the market, was Ton here. It's above the cloud. You got a bottom pattern. I don't know, some sort of Adam and Eve, whatever. Triangle breakout. It looks excellent on a setup basis. It looks very, very good, especially at a time when there's not much else going on. Not much else going on. So from an entry perspective, that looks great. Then some of this other stuff just got absolutely demolished on Legacy. This is MSTR. I have the wrong cloud on here, but whatever. Not what you want to see. Again, a fake out breakout, losing all that, giving it back just day over day over day over day like this. Maybe we get a right shoulder here, maybe we don't. You really don't want to go much lower than the previous lows here if you're still holding long. Pitchfork says you're fine, down to like, I don't know, 300 probably, but man, not what you'd want to see. It's just tough because previously in 2024, that was leading everything, that broke out before everything, and here it just didn't do much of anything. A lot of competition now on the treasury side, obviously, but I'm going to keep an eye on it. I just don't see much here in the moment for MSTR back in the range. Not a pretty sight. Coin also very ugly. Forget about it. It hit the Kijun. That's all it's got going for it. You have a massive range here. Ugly pattern that I hate trading because it just feels like a coin flip. You had a great looking breakout and then just gave everything back super, super quickly. At this point, I just would avoid trading this at all costs, but that's just me. I'm not trading this for a reason. It has kind of been a mess. I'd rather just trade ETH personally. Galaxy looks way better than anything pretty much that we've seen today other than Ton. It's still at the chart pattern breakout level. It's crypto, it's AI, it's mining. I don't know. It's a nebulous blob of crypto stuff that looks pretty good, right? Just something else to consider. Bitfarms as well, of all the miners, I looked at them all. Again, like, is it pretty? No, but it's a lot prettier than a lot of these miners out there. Still at the breakout, still above the cloud. Train has not left the station on this one. Looks okay. Bit of a penny stock for sure. And then you have the dollar. And this is something that most people would wish that they could trade right now, right? Just the chart, not what this is, obviously. Now, if you're bullish dollar, you can trade something like UUP or whatever dollar index, like dollar long index. I'm sure there's some sort of leverage instrument you could trade for that. But that's one way to hedge the crypto stuff, is to just trade the other side of the equation, trade the dollar to the long side, right? Or trade gold or trade bonds, right? Just trade something else and stop trying to force trades where they aren't there on the crypto side for a little while. Wait for the setups, let the market come to you. Unless you're seeing something I'm not on the crypto side. But this could be just a daily edge to edge. This looks real good for the dollar, which is not good for crypto. Just to add that to the list. Gold also a bit of a mess, potentially a failed consolidation here for higher, but I still like how this looks. And if gold runs for the next 2 months, add that to the list of reasons why Bitcoin won't. They don't move together. Anything above 317, it's go time. Just something else you can do, right? Something else you can trade, something else you can watch as a setup that isn't Mag 7, that isn't crypto. And then this is a bond complex. And I said this maybe a week ago, that at one day, this stuff's going to start to look good. And it doesn't look too bad. I mean, look at AG, looking like a snack down there. IEF starting to curl up. Doesn't look too bad. Now, TLT isn't for me probably ever, but this looks decent. And if this stuff looks good, that is the risk off bucket. If gold looks good, that is the risk off bucket. If the dollar, if you're bullish here, that's not risk on. So I'd keep that in mind and be careful. Now, we still have plenty of unfinished business with gold. I think we will see this. I think we will see BTC break out against gold. I think it's going to be this cycle. I think the better trade, the better long-term hold is BTC. Has been the case for quite some time. And we've been consolidating here, just trying to chip away slowly at these highs, and it measures much, much higher, as does this unforgotten gem, which is another cup and handle where we will probably see end of cycle stuff in this level up here. So we're not there yet. I still think we got plenty of room. And I think what we probably see, I don't have the 200 week on here, but what we probably see is an attempt to go to those levels this cycle and then pull back to those red lines where the 200 weeks will sit by the time we're there and back again. So we're still going to get to see potentially 40 to 60% drawdown. I wouldn't doubt it. I also wouldn't doubt some craziness in Q4, especially if things get wacky with the Fed and we just drop rates. And, who knows, right? Things could get absolutely wild where we get QE and yield curve control and stimmies, and sure, why not? Like if there's any president who's ever going to do it, it's certainly going to be this one. So I like dry powder. So we have some left in the tank for Q4. That's all I got for this one. Give me like, comment, share, subscribe, and happy trading.